I felt like it was a good first draft. I felt like we had given the Office of Planning the ammunition to go back to the state next year to get additional money. I felt like we had done a good job with the narrative, but there were gaps in the application, and the gaps in the application were all things that we failed to get from the town of Milton. So after we submitted it, and we did send a copy to Mrs. Rogers, I maintained a copy because the application was submitted electronically. I maintained a copy, and Lisa Sumston did. So the town had a copy, I did, and Lisa did. We waited to hear. We were fairly, we thought, well, if we don't get it this year, we'll get it next year, because we thought we had a good proposal put together, except for the gaps. And I kind of thought, well, this is the first time the state has done this, so it was an application sort of designed by committee, and they were asking for a lot of sort of random and wacky stuff, and I figured that a lot of the towns might have some of the same difficulties we had in pulling together the material. So I was really thinking we have a good application. I didn't think that any other town had a professional grant writer writing their proposal. And we also had Aurelio Grisanti do maps and Photoshop illustrations, all as a volunteer. And we put together a pretty tight application. Members of the Planning and Zoning Commission went to a meeting in Dover, and one of the program officers was talking about this program, and was talking about the various applications they received, and what worked and what didn't. And we also found out that Milton and Seaford were the two applicants for Sussex County. So I thought, geez, we've got a 50-50 chance to get this thing. And as a fundraiser, you hear no more often than you hear yes. So no is not an alien word to me. If you heard yes all the time, fundraising would be easy, and Milton and every other nonprofit in the world would have plenty of money. So no is the go-to answer. So we were expecting that. But then when I heard we were up against one other town, I thought, well, we're in pretty good shape. Then when I subsequently heard from this program officer what really worked and what didn't in these applications, all the stuff that worked I knew was in our application. It was tight, it was specific, it had specific outcomes, it was clear. So when I got the call saying that our application had been disqualified because the town had provided us with a letter of support rather than a resolution, I was disappointed. But I thought, normally a funder, if you kind of if you're in the right church but the wrong pew, the funder will say, you know what, send us the right form. So I called up Connie Holland and asked her about the application, and she said, well, you were disqualified because it did not come from the town of Milton. So I said, well, you submitted that letter. This was a document that came from the town of Milton, and as far as we knew, this was what satisfied the obligation to the state. And she said, well, that wasn't the only reason. She said, well, we also got a call from someone at town hall and saying that they had never seen the application. And I said, well, that's strange to me because we submitted a copy of this application to the town of Milton. So town hall does have a copy of this. So people at town hall should know what's in it. They should have participated in the creation of it, but did not respond to the email. So we were kind of out there on our own. I asked Connie if she would tell me who that person was that called, and she said, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I don't want to get in the middle of something. Clearly she knew that the calling of the state was a blunder. And then I subsequently found out that it was our mayor who called, leaving the state no other choice but to determine that the town of Milton did not submit this application. And that is why we did not get it. Yes, there were other forms that we needed to have in there that the town did not provide, but it was that phone call along with the wrong piece of paper that sunk this thing. And I just this is not a conversation I wanted to have in public, but when I saw it in the paper that you took no responsibility for this and you threw other people under the bus, it's not okay. I don't know what the lesson here is, because after you do an event where you reach out to a funder and they say no, or you write a proposal and they say no, you kind of do a post-mortem and you say, oh, what worked, what didn't. And sometimes it's just a matter of economics. The funder didn't have the money. In this case, I don't know what the post-mortem is. I don't know what the lesson is that's to be learned here. I mean, I think now we know what a resolution is, and next time we'll get that right. But the petty, secretive, personalized stuff that sunk this, I don't get it. And I don't think you're going to change, Marion. I don't think that you're going to stop doing stuff like that. I'm going to ask the council to sort of help in some way to make this a more grown-up thing. This is real. This is not a plaything. This is not a hobby. These are people's lives, and it's the economy of the town. And for some reason, I don't understand it. And that's why I did not talk to the press about this, because I thought, this is not something that you discuss publicly. I don't get it.
I am glad you brought it tonight. We expected to hear something. Social media has been very busy. I want to make sure that I touch on all your points, though I listened to you without making notes. I called Connie Holland. My conversation was, it was a message. I had not seen the application at the time, that the resolution box, and I had not seen it, the resolution box had been marked, and could someone please, I think I asked Dorothy Morris, to send a copy.
Let me just ask a question. Why did you not ask Mrs. Rogers for that? Why did you not ask me? Why did you not ask Lisa Sunstein? We were supposed to be your team working with you on this, and for what I don't get why you had to call the state and ask that question.
I had already talked to Mrs. Rogers, Barry, and she noted that the resolution had been marked, but she did not have a copy. That is when I called Connie Holland. I can tell you that call, that's an interpretive part for you, because unless Connie Holland told you that as a result of my phone call, which implied nothing negative towards the writers or that grant, made their decision.
She did say that.
I would be very surprised that was
when
the
I
basis.
spoke to her, when I said, I don't get it, you're telling us that it's because we supplied a letter rather than a resolution, and she said, well, there was a call.
And I made it very clear to Mrs. Sunstein that I was the one who made that call. That's the email that I sent her. And I explained that to her, and I did leave that message for Connie Holland. I cannot say that this wasn't already in place. I mean, by the time I actually talked to Connie Holland about this, her question was who had submitted it and making sure it was submitted by the town of Milton. Yes, I went over the history of Lisa having come in here, the council endorsing the project. That is correct. If I'm not mistaken, Lisa and Mrs. Rogers were supposed to meet. Me personally being involved and supplying the information wasn't very practical. It was going to come from town hall. That's why I referred Lisa. If I didn't answer you, I'm sorry. But I would have referred Lisa to Mrs. Rogers. And I'm glad this has come up. I've been very distressed by the Cape Gazette comment. I'm not sure I don't want to point the finger, he's throwing somebody under the bus. I can tell you that the responsibility I want to take at this time personally is that when the idea of completing this grant came to council and we agreed to go forward, that I did not ask for the grant to be completed in a timely manner and have it returned to town hall to be looked at before it was submitted. For that I take full responsibility.
Which is not anything you said to the Cape Gazette. You took
But the Cape Gazette didn't report everything I said to them either. Mr. Goodinson, I found the article very slanted, and then I found the cartoon that followed it, irresponsibility on top of irresponsible reporting. There, I said it.
No, and I have to disagree.
And I'm not pointing the finger at the volunteers who did this piece of work. I'm not, and I don't think the
Marion,
article
you can't have it
stated
both ways. You can't publicly throw people under the bus and then piously say, I'm not pointing fingers. It doesn't work that way.
Pointing fingers doesn't work either, Mr. Goodinson. It doesn't. And for the work that you did, we are grateful. I think collectively, the council knew Mrs. Sunstein was carrying this ball. I can't answer for everybody. I do not believe we were ready yet for this. I believe we will be in a better position after your board brings the comp plan to us and we have an adopted comp plan. And we also have the ability, as I told the reporter who did the article, we would also have the ability to speak to the folks in Seaford about what their first year in the grant meant.
If you didn't think we were ready, then why did you vote to move forward?
Because I
or was your just hands-off approach, your sort of pocket veto of the process? I'm not going to participate. I'm going to sink this thing, and if I can't sink it by not participating, I'll call the state and sink it.
That is not what happened. That is not what happened. I supported Mrs. Sunstein's efforts.
How? Actively. How did you actively support this process?
I do know I met with her in between the time that the council approved and then you were working on the document. Support how else, Mr. Goodinson? But to give her access to town information, I mean, that was available. I think that was clear, Mrs. Sunstein. We didn't expect her to know all of this on her own or you as a writer.
Excuse me? We keep talking about Mrs. Sunstein, and she's not here. So maybe we don't know what she would say. So maybe we can move off of her. I mean, I have in front of me the Delaware Downtown Development District Program Application Completeness Checklist.
Right, I've seen it.
It has 30 items on it. 16 are marked not provided or not filled out.
And again,
and two of those they put okay because it was optional. So 14 of the things we needed to do weren't done.
right. And where were they to come from? The town.
I guess
My point is, if you felt that we were not ready to move forward with this, which is a perfectly rational conclusion, then you should not have had us move forward. However, if you were going to move forward with it, you needed to have skin in the game and you needed to be doing something. And when you didn't do something, which again is perfectly fine, but when you didn't do something and then you're asked about it, you don't blame the people who did all the work while you stood by and did nothing. That's all I've come here to say, is I don't expect any resolution. I don't expect this to be fixed. I think we're in a good shape for next year to get this done well. But I really felt it was important for me to publicly defend my reputation that you, Marion, damaged. That's the only reason I'm speaking. Thank you.
David Jones. Only thing I would do is recommend that in the future, when this application is resubmitted, that it be handled by someone on staff at the town hall and not given out to volunteers. I think that would be a much better way to handle the situation in the future.
If I may, I dissent from that in that if we have are volunteers, I think we should take advantage of their expertise and their willingness to work with the town and for the town without compensation. I think we're missing the boat if we turn off our experts in numerous fields, not just grant writing, but in numerous fields where we have expertise. I think we want to continue.
No, I agree. There are a lot of very smart and talented people in this town, and you should use us.
And I have to agree, when this came up, I did not, except for when Mrs. Sumstein came in a couple months ago. And as a council person, I can only vote on what comes up to me at these meetings. And I have a very successful business just up the road, so I have skin in the town. And when you read articles like that in the paper, it's kind of a hit job, and then the cartoon, I mean, this town is growing. I drive through on a Friday and Saturday night, it's packed. I am so busy at work now, I went from part-time to working 50, 60 hours a week. Milton has grown despite all of this. And I do think, when I first read the article, that, you know, gosh, it's too bad we don't have grant writers in this town, not knowing the backgrounds. And I do think we need to lean on our population here. We have some very smart people that come from all over, both Delaware that are from here and outside. And we keep getting sort of caught up in this because, you know, our town is a little bit smaller, but we have pieces that keep getting missed up here on council. And, you know, sitting up here, really, we meet once, maybe twice a month, and things do fall through the cracks. So we've been hearing both sides, and it is frustrating.
One of the things I noticed in reviewing the grant, I read the application, is there's assumptions made in it that really don't work. The assumption that the town center is going to be changed. That's part of a zoning district. The only way that should be changed is to come before council and rezone. And the comprehensive plan carries no weight in that area at all. This whole assumption that we're going to form part of this document is based on inaccurate information. Sam, that's why I was worried about who wrote the document. The procedures, this assumes certain things that are incorrect.
Well, and I'll just, for my 2 cents on volunteers, we should use the volunteers. We should use the volunteers that make themselves available, but the volunteers need to understand that they're volunteering for the town. And personally, if I was missing 14 things, and I knew I was missing 14 things, I wouldn't have sent it in. While the volunteers are good to do some work, the town, either town hall or this group here, is responsible. So part of your volunteer work is to make sure that all the I's are crossed and T's are dotted, or vice versa.
When people refuse to communicate with you, it's hard to cross T's and dot I's.
Well,
You can't have it both ways.
well,
You cannot. I mean, I've run nonprofit organizations, and we treat volunteers like staff, and they have to be supervised, and they've got to be supported. And when you abdicate that responsibility, that's on you.
I have to say, I'd like you to repeat that because I'm not exactly sure, because what I feel like me personally, I did turn that over to someone. I did. And trusted that volunteer, as I would any job assignment. So correct me if I'm wrong, because
You're wrong.
This is how I thought about it. This was turned over to somebody who wanted to fill out the application. She was very excited, and there was a lot to be gained from it. Why would I stand in the way of her enthusiasm, Mr. Goodinson? I believe that she had a point, but the points that are missing on this application.
The things that are missing from the application were the responsibility of the town.
If I missed an email and did not answer it, was that enough notification, if it was not me, of the town asking again what was needed on our part to complete the grant? That's part of what I found missing in the process. And if it wasn't me who could provide you with the answer, I am sure town hall could be contacted. That's what baffles me.
Let me tell you about my interaction with town hall. I needed a map from the engineer. And I called town hall and said, can you give me the name of the engineer and the phone number? And I was told, no, we're not allowed to share that. Everything has to go through us. You can't speak to them directly, because if you call them and they pick up the phone, it starts the clock running and it's going to incur an expense, which I get. Now the fact that I was getting up at 3 in the morning to work on this thing, and not charging you what I normally charge my clients to do this, and you were saving a hell of a lot of money, didn't figure into your calculus of cost savings. So I Googled him, found his phone number myself, and called him, and got some of what I needed. Then we needed to get something else. We needed a map. And again, we were playing telephone. Of course, you wouldn't speak to me. You don't return my calls, you don't return my emails, so I have to do it through Lisa. Lisa then speaks to you. Then I get a call saying, the map that you need is available at town hall. Go pick it up. That was your instructions to me. It's a map. The application needed to be submitted electronically. So I needed an electronic version. So I thought, well, you know what, I'm not going to try to explain, how to do this thing. So I was not walking as well as I had been, or I am now. So I get myself over to the town hall to get the map, find that the handicap spot is occupied by the code enforcer's truck. So I can't find parking at the town hall. Then I get inside. John Collier had provided, you had said, get this map. You didn't tell him that it could be done electronically. He gave it to me, but then I said, you have it available electronically. He sent it over. So I made this stupid trip over there for nothing because of this convoluted, we can't talk to people. I mean, working with the process that was put in place, if we had sat down at the beginning, Marion, as I do with every other client, and gone through this process, we would not be having this conversation right
The final day and the map debacle that you're talking about occurred on the final day.
Yes.
Mrs. Rogers was out that morning, Lisa and I texted back and forth all morning long, and I texted directions and talked to town staff about what she said she needed. If that was not was provided for you, I don't know where that error could have occurred.
I've been doing this for a long time, and I know that there's always stuff that pops up at the end, and I try to minimize all of those little surprises at the end, which is the reason you sit down. It's like if you get furniture from IKEA, you read the directions before you pull out the animal. And that's what we were trying to do here. I wanted to sit down and go through the process. You wouldn't do it. I don't know why, but you wouldn't do it. And it placed the entire process in an untenable situation.
Wouldn't do it, I'm sorry, would mean I refuse to do it. I don't, Mr. Goodinson, in all honesty, I don't ever remember refusing to meet
Marion,
anybody about this.
you never refuse, you just don't act.
Okay. And for that, I also have to say, if it's a matter of your reputation, nothing was ever intended nor even thought in terms of that.
No, that's the problem. It was done without thought. Thank you.